Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nesbitt Connection podcast. This is, I believe, it's the first one of the year 2023, and I'm excited to be back with you. I'm actually going to name this podcast because I lots of times I get help, but I think I'm going to name this one because it's the first one that I've done with what I call my new Bionic Ear, and I want to share with you the experience that I had getting this cochlear implant. I call it my Bionic Ear. I'll turn my head real fast so you can see what I'm talking about. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see it obviously in the audio version, but you won't. But I want you to see just actually what they actually implanted in the side of my head. So this has been an amazing experience and one that I want to share with you because I think it's so valuable. And I'm the type of person that no matter what seems to be going on or what I'm going through, I can always learn something from it because, let's face it, to me, life was pretty simple. If I just sit back and watch and learn, and I can kind of relate, what goes on, with my life, and I think I can always apply it back to leadership. And that's what I want to share with you today because the lessons that I have learned, in getting this cochlear implant it's been something else. And I want to share with you a couple of things I think it's quite important because I sometimes can be, it's amazing just, what went on. So you got to just picture this. I'm going into the surgery, okay? And I'm in this hospital gown or whatever, they don't let you wear very much. I'm telling you, they don't. I'm in there with this little gown on. There's 4 or 5, they're all ladies actually, and they're all kind of standing around. And I see them going over this checklist, and it wasn't much, say, bigger than a sheet of paper. And one lady would read something, and then she would pass it to the other person, and they were simply saying, "Hey, look, at my name is so-and-so, I'm going to be doing this today, and these are the jobs I'm going to perform." And then she'd pass it to somebody else and say, "Hey, my name is so-and-so, I'm going to be doing this, I'm your anesthesiologist," whatever it is. And it was really funny because, just before I went to start, before they went to put me under, I had said to them, I said, "Has anybody in here ever read the book, The Checklist Manifesto?" And the anesthesiologist who was actually standing behind me, she said, "Yes, I have." She said, "That's where I've gotten this, or that's where we got this checklist from." And that just blew me away because if you no idea how much I respect the book, The Checklist Manifesto. And the book actually was gave to me by the owner of a company in Sudbury I did some work for. And since then, him and I have become great friends over the last 8 or 9 years. And it's an awesome book, and it's actually wrote by a surgeon. So there's your tip of the day. You can read the book, The Checklist Manifesto. So I want to share something with you because when I went into this surgery, I was somewhat warned, and I can't get over. There was one thing here. You cannot get over how good the staff was at the hospital here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, before the surgery. And then if you're, I know there's people literally all over the world that kind of tune into this stuff. To me, the hospitals in Ontario they're a mess. They're an absolute mess. But you have no idea how good the people are on the ground. And I think there's something key with that. Even though the place is a mess, and I'm not here to knock the leaders, but everything rises and falls on leadership. So if it's a mess, look at the leader. The people did a good job, and I see that a lot. When I go into places, sometimes maybe the senior leaders, maybe they could learn a few skills, but the people, they want to do a good job. And I see it all the time, and I think that's something to really be proud of. But before I go into the surgery, like I say, it's literally a 5-hour surgery. It's quite involved, what they do. And as a result of what they've done, I now have very little hearing in this ear without this Bionic Ear. And it's quite fascinating to see how it works and how good it is. I'm going to share with you, the experience because it's just been something else. But one of the things that I did notice more than anything is that the surgeon, and I'm going to talk about the surgery with regards to giving feedback, because giving feedback sometimes can be a challenge. How do we give feedback? And the thing is I'm sitting back, because believe me, I got time to think when this was all going on too, right? After the surgery, I got to lie there for a few hours, and I'm thinking. And I think one of the most important things that I noticed is that, before the surgeon started, they actually put a sensor in my eye, right? He said, "You're going to have a black eye when it's done, or there's a chance you could have a black eye when you're done." And the reason being is they actually put a sensor in your eye, so in doing the surgery, they can tell maybe if they're doing something with the muscles or the nerves, in my face. Obviously, they didn't want to paralyze my face. But the thing is the reason I say this is they put a monitor on there to tell if what they were doing was working or not, and if everything was all right. And when we're given feedback, wouldn't it be nice if we paid attention to, are we hurting the person? Are we upsetting them? Are they getting it? Are they understanding what we're trying to say? And I think what's really important with this whole surgeon thing I want to share with, because it's so relative, is the surgeon, he didn't attack me. He just went after the problem. He just literally put an incision on the side of my head, right kind of behind my ear, right inside my ear. That's all he attacked. He didn't go after my arm. He didn't go after my legs. He just kind of went after the problem. And lots of times, when we're working with people, we want to give feedback. It's so easy to attack the person, when really all we need to be concerned with is the problem. And I want to share with you too, he didn't use a crowbar. He didn't use a sledgehammer. He's not like these shows that my wife watches on TV, these home shows where they all use a sledgehammer to work on their house. I've never seen that yet, but on TV it works. But they didn't use a crowbar. They used very precise tools, and they were very gentle about it. And if we're going to give feedback, is that not kind of how it's got to be? We can't go into somebody with a crowbar, or if you go in there with a shotgun and you shoot everything, well, then you get nothing left. And what do you gain? So I just want to say, he went in, he attacked the problem. He didn't attack me. He used very precise tools, and he used a monitor to tell if he was doing any damage or not. And I think that's a perfect way to do feedback. And another thing that it's somewhat a bit annoying to me. I don't know if you noticed when I turn my head, but I have got a mole kind of above my ear. I've had it since I was a kid. And he said to me before the surgery, he says, Mark, he said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this mole. He said, I'm going to be right there. And I said, well, I've had it since I was a kid. I've had it for 59 years, or 58 years. I think I could do without it. Just if you don't mind, just snip it off and you're in there. I said, well, I'll see. So sure enough, I got all done. He never touched the mole. And the reason I say this is he went after one problem. He wasn't there to do cosmetic surgery. He was there to do one problem. And if we're given feedback, I think that's quite important. We're there to discuss one problem. We're not there to rip the person apart and tell them, hey, look, this is wrong and this is wrong. We're there to discuss an issue. So like I say, this is some of the stuff that I just learned through this whole, getting the Bionic Ear. And it's been an amazing, you can't imagine the story that it's been. You can't believe the highs. I got to actually, all I wanted is I wanted to be able to hear my family eating Christmas dinner. And I got it. You have no idea how interesting it was to be able to say everybody eating Christmas dinner, hey, look, I can hear y'all. This is the first time in a long time I've been able to hear y'all. And this is really, it was something, very emotional and it was something. But I want to share with you, so there's that. But the thing is that, I was warned ahead of time. And I'm not trying to bore you with this, but I was warned ahead of time that when this device got activated, they say it could take months to learn how to hear. And I'm thinking, that's nonsense. That can't be true. There's nothing that hard. Because they literally, they disconnect your natural hearing, and now there's a new speaker in there, and your brain has to learn to hear this new speaker. And I like I said, I'd heard people say that it's like learning a new language. It's like, and I thought, well, it can't be that bad. It really can't be that bad. So I'd go down there with my wife, and they kind of rushed me in 2 weeks after the surgery. I go in, and I want to share with you too. After 1 week after the surgery, I got to go back in and get the stitches removed. The gentleman that took out the stitches was absolutely amazing. I said, I can't believe how good you are at this. And he said something I never forgot. I wrote it down, and everything I have here, actually, I put on my phone because I didn't want to remember because it was so good. And that's why I've got notes today, which I typically don't use notes when I do a podcast. But he said to me after he took out the stitches, and I said, I didn't feel a thing. He said, I can't believe how good you are. And he turned to me and he said, sir, he said, if all you're going to do is one thing, you better be good at it. And I thought, whoa, isn't that something? If all we're going to do was one thing, we better be good at it. So like I say, this is just some of the stuff I've learned. So I go in after 2 weeks, and typically wait a month. I went after 2 weeks. They rushed me in, and they hooked me up, and I took my wife with me, and of course, we're still in COVID stuff here in Ottawa, and you got to wear masks. So I'm there with my wife, and she's got a mask on. She's sitting beside me. And then the audiologist is a sweetheart. You have no idea how nice a lady she is. And she puts the device on. And all I heard was like the ocean. And I said, I think it's broken. All I hear is the ocean. And she said, oh, that's it. And I said, you got to be kidding me. My wife said, you looked at my face, you could tell I was upset. And I said, well, I hear the ocean. And I could read her lips, and she's a professional, right? So she's actually typing out on the screen in big letters. She said, you've got to learn to hear the words in that ocean. And I thought, oh boy, this going to be something. I guess this is what people were talking about. So I started to write. I started to listen for the words, and I could sort of make them out. And after, I'll tell you what it was, and I know it was 5 minutes. 5 minutes in, she took a piece of paper with some colors on it, and she said, I want you to. She read off them, and she said, I want you to hear me. And I says, yeah. So she said red, and I was supposed to repeat red, and you know how all of this goes. And then she did it again, and she covered her lips, so I couldn't read her lips. And then she said, repeat the word red, repeat the word blue, and I did it. This was 6 minutes after she hooked me up. She couldn't believe it. And I said, I can actually, in hearing you talk, I can actually make out you've got a French accent. She said, oh my God, I've never seen this before. So she turns to my wife and she said, do you want to say something to him? So Lisa says to me, she says, can you hear me? And I said, God, I actually can hear you. I heard her say it. Now, she sounded like a chipmunk. I got to be honest. She sounded like a chipmunk, or, when somebody, breathes in helium. That's what she sounded like. But I could hear her with a mask on beside me. And I couldn't do that before. I hate masks with a passion because I can't hear when people wear them, or I couldn't hear. So, of course, my wife busts into tears, and this audiologist breaks into tears, and I get all emotional. What an experience. 6 minutes in. And she said, this is like unheard of. I never heard this before. And I said, well, as soon as she told me I had to learn to hear, right away I knew it was up to me. It was my attitude. And the reason I share this, I had a training session booked the next day. And when I had shared that with her, boy, she thought that was a pretty aggressive move, but I did it. I did a training session the next day, and it went very well. Then, of course, the people were so good. I can't emphasize enough. For the last number of years, I've been training with groups, and they know I'm hard of hearing. Everybody has been nice. There has not been one person in the group that hasn't been patient, and I want to thank the people that I've had the privilege to work with, because that's been the case. So, of course, we leave the hospital, and I'm just amazed at what I can hear. We're driving on the road. My wife snaps her fingers. I said, what's that noise? And she says, snap my fingers. You can hear that? And I said, yeah. We get home, maybe half an hour later, and she opens the car door, and I heard a chime. I says, is there a chime when the door's open in this car? And she said, yes. I've drove the car for 5 years, did not know that there was a chime when the car door was open. So, I'm just blown away with how I can hear. And that being the case, I go back actually, and it literally in 2 weeks later, I went back. I had back I think 4 times in 2 weeks to get it adjusted. Okay, and the part that's interesting with this is after the 4th one, which is 2 weeks in, they put me in the sound booth with just the hearing aid or just with the device on, and they gave me a hearing test. And as far as I'm concerned, these hearing tests, they do it to stump you up because they know that you can't hear, right? And they say, repeat the word fox, repeat the word socks, and all this. 'Cause a lot of words sound alike, and they're trying to trick you. And before I had the surgery with no hearing aids, I got 12% of the words right, okay? 2 weeks in with this device, I got 68% of the words right. It was just amazing. And the funny thing is, we get out of this, and she's telling me, I've never seen this before. She said people usually go 6 months before they can hear this good. And I thought, well, I'm pretty proud of this. I guess I'm not smart enough to know I wasn't supposed to hear. I kind of clued in pretty quick, and she just kind of laughed. But, we had a good talk with that. But she said, you're doing really good for 2 weeks. For a month. And I said, it's not a month, it's been 2 weeks. She said, no, it's not, it's been a month. And I said, no, really, it's only been 2 weeks since I had this. And then, of course, she'd look at the piece of paper and she said, you're just ridiculous. She said, I can't believe it, how good you're taking off. So I want to share with you just the experience it's been. It's been absolutely amazing, to be able to hear my kids. I phone my kids now on the phone. I can hear them on the phone, on Bluetooth, which before was somewhat hard to do. And the thing I want to share that's most important about this whole thing, about this bionic hearing, is that the fact that this entire story could have been prevented had I worn hearing protection. Okay, you can't work around crushers and sit on those Michigan loaders with those Detroit diesel engines screaming, with no hearing protection, and not expect to lose your hearing. So the whole story could have been prevented had I worn hearing protection. And that's all I had to do. And the thing is, you've got to ask yourself, what are we doing to ourselves that can be prevented? What are we doing to ourselves that can be prevented? I got to listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts over the holidays because I literally listened. I bet you I was listening. Well, the battery lasts 16 hours, and there were some days the batteries was going dead. So I was literally listening, I would say, good 10, 12 hours a day to podcasts and books. I got to learn a lot. And one of the things, and I wish I could say I remember where I heard it, but they said that 7 out of 10 people, if they know they're doing something that's hurting their health and literally is killing them, 7 out of 10 won't stop. They'll die before they stop. And boy, that's pretty interesting. And I was the same way with the hearing protection. I wouldn't wear it. Hearing protection, that was for sissies. Real men didn't do that. Well, I'm here to tell you today, I wish that I would have been a sissy years ago, because maybe I would have had my hearing today. So that's it. I wanted to share this with you because to me, it's such an amazing story, as to how technology has advanced. Like I'm not a big tech guy. I really not. I think I certainly don't like high tech companies and how they influence people. That's another story for another day. And I sometimes I think it's spoiled us, maybe so we're not critical thinkers anymore. But the technology that is in this Bionic Ear is just amazing. I go over to see my mom. She's 81. She doesn't live too far away from me. And of course, like she says, 80 years ago, this was never talked about. This is so. It's amazing to see just how much things have advanced. And for what it's worth, I'm on the list to get the second one done. And I got to wait a year again. But I'm going to have 2 Bionic Ears, and I really cannot wait because it's opened up a whole new world for me to be able to hear things. And I've did a lot of training, since the first of the year with groups. I think the biggest groups maybe been say 10. And to be able to go into a group and hear the group without having to have a little microphone connected to my hearing aid so I can hear them, it's just been amazing. I'm almost like a normal person again. So thank you very much. Enjoy yourself, and thanks so much for tuning into the podcast. I really appreciate it. And whatever you do, look after yourself and don't end up like me and having to get a Bionic Ear.